Well, welcome everyone to our special meeting of council for Monday, June 12th. And I'll turn it over to the clerk to give the electronic meeting participation. Disclaimer, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. So we have displayed our electronic meeting participation guidelines. If anyone has trouble with that, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and we'll gladly provide assistance. Other than that, we can proceed, Your Worship.
Okay. Are you going to do the Indigenous land acknowledgement?
Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, just moving on here. So we acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral lands of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. The town of Petrolia is located on the land associated with the Huron Tract Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and with the Indigenous peoples who've called this land home.
Thank you. And I guess we'll go to roll call.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Hyatt.
Present.
Councillor O'Hara. Councillor Patel.
Present.
Councillor Welsh.
Present.
Acting Mayor Field.
Present.
And that is quorum, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anyone? I guess we don't really going to have a declaration of conflict of interest, the adoption of the agenda. We'll move on to our presentation. Thank you very much, Kate, for coming today to talk to us and for the sessions you held with us. It was harmless. We appreciated those. So I'll turn it over to you.
Your Worship, if I could just get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented,
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Clark and Councillor Welsh. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor? Perfect, thank you. Sorry about that, Mandy.
All good.
Okay, well, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Really nice to see, for some of you to see you again, for others to speak with you again, but get to see you, I guess, face to face for the first time. And I'll start by just, I know this is repetitive from our first conversations, but thank you very much for making time in what I know is a busy schedule for all of you to think big about the future and what you're here to accomplish together. And I really appreciate the opportunity to support you from beginning to end through this process. So I have, I'm just going to share my screen here. Can you see that okay? I'm hoping so. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody?
Perfect, yeah. That's
Perfect. Good. Okay, wonderful. So as you know, this is the first, certainly not the last, but the beginning conversation about establishing a new strategic plan for the town of Petrolia for the period of 2024 to 2028. So period beginning next year and over the next few years. And I think very wisely, it's not exactly the term of council, as you all know well, which will give the incoming term of council a bit of wiggle room where there's already a strategic plan in place. But a good period to be thinking collectively about in 2023 in this kind of in-between year. So here's what I'm hoping that we can use our first opportunity as a group together to do. So to kick off, just talk a little bit about strategic planning generally. I know for some of you, you have seen this movie before, you've been through these processes. For others, this may feel a bit newer. So we'll just talk about why this is, worthy of you investing your valuable time in and what we hope to accomplish. We'll then move into the starting point for this particular plan. As all of you know, there's been a fair bit of prep work done, including by your administration over the last few months leading up to the election last year. There was an analysis done of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then all of you, I'm very grateful, invested some time in a preparatory conversation about what your priorities are and what you'd like to accomplish. So I'll start by sharing a bit with you about what I heard from you, see if I heard you correctly, and we'll use that as kind of the beginning point for tonight. And then we'll move into big picture vision, that long-term perspective on the horizon of where you are moving Petrolia towards and your priorities. And as I said at the outset, none of this tonight will be final decisions. There's no document to approve. We're not going to walk out of the Zoom room with anything final. It's just about getting ideas on the table and getting a sense of those shared ideas. And then we'll close off with some next steps about what you can expect to see as the process unfolds over the next few months. I'll also just note here that I'm very grateful that you've got Rick and a number of your senior administrators on the call today. They are here, because this is an important conversation and to hear from you. But usually these are conversations for members of council. So we won't be getting into specific projects or kind of Q&A on the status of certain things. This is more a chance for you as members of council to think big and share ideas about the perspectives of where you'd like to lead the municipality. There will be moments throughout the process later on, though, where there's a bit more, kind of back and forth with administration on the details of specific projects. So, and feel free to interject. I hope we can keep this fairly informal. If you've got anything you'd like to say along the way, but if not, I'll keep moving and we'll proceed along these lines. So just a little bit about me. I am a total local government nerd, and I am delighted to get to work with you. I will learn a lot from you through this process. I spent 10 years myself working as a staff member in municipal government. I worked at the City of London, and then I left in 2017 to pursue a more academic path. I finished my PhD in local government. I started teaching in the local government program. I teach at Western and at Huron, and then I also work in a part-time capacity in roles kind of like this, so supporting municipalities across the country, usually on things related to council strategy, sometimes council staff relations, things like that. And I totally love it. It's a ton of fun. Okay, so big picture, why are we doing this? You have a lot of things you can spend your time talking about. Why is this something that's important? Well, the sort of obvious, I guess, textbook reason would be that it's legally one of the most important roles for a municipal council. So as you all know, in Ontario's Municipal Act, your first task as council is to represent the well-being of your residents. Your second task is to have a plan in place for what the municipality is doing in terms of policies and programs. And so in practice, the sort of normal way that happens is a municipal council, usually within about the first year after an election, kind of like this, will sit down and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish during a period of time, sometimes the term of council or beyond? What are those big picture things that bring us together? And you will know better than most, a lot of the work of municipal councils tends to be very transactional, right? So you have a lot of different reports that come to you. You're looking for decisions on this topic and that topic. Most meetings include a whole host of different kinds of things. And so to move beyond sort of the busyness and the transactional nature of that work, strategic planning, when done well, is an opportunity to sort of collectively lift your eyes towards the horizon and say, okay, where are we headed and how do all of those decisions help get us there? This is perhaps more a personal perspective. I love a pretty document as much as anybody else. And we will get there in the end. You will have a document that's titled, Town of Petrolia Strategic Plan. In my view, that is a small part of what this process is all about. Any one of us could sit down at a computer and write a document like that today. The more important thing, in my view, is the time invested in hearing from one another, hearing from your administration, and hearing from the community about the direction that you're headed. What are the priorities right now? Things like that. That should be the real value here, is an opportunity to think strategically in the same way that we know successful from Fortune 500 companies, large public sector organizations, creating more time for strategic thinking as a group repeatedly is found in the research as being an ingredient in a successful organization that's able to meet its goals. So I view my task here is to support you in doing that and help facilitate conversations that are really between you as a group about the things that matter most to you and in your community right now. Okay, and then why is this an important exercise right now? So again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know here, but it has been an extremely chaotic couple of years, much more so than most. Change is always happening for local governments, but it doesn't often include things as significant as what we've all lived through in the last few years. And then, of course, in the wake of that, from huge inflationary pressures to real struggles from mental health and addictions to, the real practical challenge with supply chain issues and so on. There are a lot of big things that are in flux, and that's impacting municipalities across the country. You are in a group of municipalities that also happens to be experiencing very unusual levels of growth. The exodus of people from Toronto to Hamilton and Hamilton's to London's and London's to Petrolia's and so on. We are seeing this migration of people who are looking for a different kind of quality of life experience. And Petrolia is experiencing a huge amount of growth, as you know very well. So in my humble opinion, having these conversations is especially important in times of change, where you have a chance to sort of stop and collectively think about what's happening in your community and how you may need to respond to it as an organization. Okay, so I'm hoping you'll indulge me here for a moment in a quick warm-up exercise. And this is something that if you could just take a moment on your own. And I've got a question for you. And if you have something you can write with a pen or on your phone or on your computer, whatever, just jot down a few things quietly, and then we'll share them with each other as a chance to sort of get into the sort of big picture thinking headspace. Okay, so here's the question for you, your worship and members of council. So I'd like you to imagine that you are away on vacation somewhere that's far away. It can be wherever you want. For me, it would be somewhere that's much warmer than what we seem to be experiencing right now in Ontario. So you're on vacation far away and you meet somebody and they ask you where you're from, and they have never heard of Petrolia. They have no idea about where you're from, where this community is, and so on. But they ask you to tell them a few things about your community. So take a moment just to yourself and think for a few seconds about what exactly you would say. How would you describe Petrolia to someone who knew nothing about it? It's hard to know in the right moment. So I see your eyes looking away. I don't know if pens are up or down, but is anyone willing to share what first came to mind for you? What would you say?
Oh, okay, I can go. First point I wrote down is small town charm.
Okay. Very good.
I could go. I also wrote down small town, that I always constantly tell people about our significance in the global oil industry, and that we have city amenities and good people.
City amenities, good people. Okay, very good.
I can share. Go ahead.
Sense of community that we have, the spirit of it.
Okay, strong sense of community, very good.
I live in a rural area, rich in culture and heritage with big town resources and infrastructure.
Okay. Some similarities emerging here, very good.
Everybody's pretty much covered what I wrote. I started with small town, rich history with oil beginnings, community events, friendly people, of course, the VPP.
Okay, fabulous. So it sounds like you're all describing the same place, which is a very good starting point. We'd be having a different conversation if it was everyone kind of had a different sense of identity in this community, who you are and what you're all about. After the one-on-one conversations with you, I'm not surprised in the slightest that you wrote down very similar things. And I think we'll return to quite a few of those phrases that you mentioned today, even when talking about what the big vision is for the community. It also is clear, again, just as a listener to your responses to this question and in the discussions that we had, just how proud you are to be leaders in, but also members of the Petrolia community. Again, that's I get to do this kind of work in many communities, and that sense of pride and identity is not as strong everywhere as I think you have it very naturally, from the small town feel and the very connected community, but also a lot of pride in the important historical role the community has played, and with global consequence. So a really neat place that you all lead and get to be a part of. And my guess is if we were to ask members of the public, they'd probably have very similar answers to what you shared here. Okay, thank you for indulging me. Okay, so our starting point. So as I mentioned, we will, just so that we're not kind of beginning with a blank page, I'm going to share a little bit with you about first what your senior administration team, fabulous public servants, by the way, as I know you know, had to say about kind of the place of Petrolia right now in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then I'll share a little bit with you about what you had to say about your priorities for the term ahead, and then we'll pause and have a discussion to see if we have captured it. And my guess is there's probably a few important things that are missing from this list, but it will give us a starting point as we think about kind of the place of Petrolia right now. Okay, so as I said.
Hey, can I ask a question? Will you share this presentation with us afterwards, or do I need to be taking detailed notes?
Definitely don't take detailed notes, and yes, we can share it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so again, probably you're all familiar with doing a SWOT analysis. This is a sort of commonly used tool to think about two kind of axes of things. So the first is things that are helpful to your community. So things like strengths and opportunities, obviously positive things, things that are changing for the better, that are opportunities for the municipality to take advantage of. And then of course, the flip side of that is there are harmful dynamics. There are things that may be weakening or threatening your ability as a municipality and as a community. New challenges emerging like pandemics to inflationary pressures that make it harder to deliver services, things like that. And then the other axis to consider is things that are internal and things that are external, things that you really can't control. So again, when we went through this exercise with your senior administration team, here were the sort of most important things that emerged from that discussion. So in terms of strengths, this first one is a lot about all of you. We heard a real sense after the election, but also just in terms of the general tone in the community, that there is a real sense of optimism and possibility. This came up in a lot of the discussions with all of you as well. You've got a motivated, nimble, and capable team who are doing their, it's not a time where you've got, everybody in senior roles is brand new and so on. You've got a team that's established and is working together. They've been able to move things forward. So you've got that steady base. There was a sense that the municipal brand is quite strong and that you have been recognized for leadership in a number of key areas. Asset management specifically was one that came up quite a bit. You've made some very significant strides in terms of the financial position of the organization. You've put some new practices in place and have a long-range plan, which is great. Resiliency, again, this speaks to the difficulty of the last few years, but, and I liked the quote about we didn't miss a beat. So even in the wake of, really significant things changing and so on, there was still that ability to make sure that people had access to the basic services that they rely on in your community. And then finally, that there was a really strong shared focus on residents. So an openness to diverse ideas and perspectives in a collegial atmosphere, but that as an organization, it seems quite clear at all levels that, municipalities are in the quality of life business. And so that focus on people in Petrolia and their experiences, it's not something you need to move towards. It sounds like it's already built in. So a really solid list of strengths to begin with. Weaknesses. So this is not a Petrolia problem. This is a problem in democracies around the world. But there is a decline in trust for the public service. And sometimes that can create a lot of tension. I suspect that you all experience this personally as well, where when someone is upset about something and it may be within your control or it may not be, people who work in public service, elected or appointed, are often sort of the starting point for them to go to try to solve that problem, which sometimes can happen and sometimes can't. Expectations are very high. With a lot of growth and new people coming to the community, their sense about what they would like to see the municipality providing, from childcare to recreation amenities and so on, is going to be high. And I think there was a feeling from you and from your staff team, if I heard you, that you sort of expect that that's going to continue to escalate. So creates a challenge about being able to meet those expectations. And then finally, financial pressure from growth. Some of the provincial changes, of course, have not been financially difficult for municipalities. And then broader in terms of, there's a lot of change from the cost of gas and groceries and housing, and people are feeling the pinch. And then for organizations that build things like you do, it creates new cost pressures as well. Okay, and then in terms of opportunities, there is a sort of perceived sense from your senior team that there is a high public and political appetite for new programs and ideas. And again, this is sort of driven by the increased expectations. There may be opportunities to better use technology. We're at the beginning of a total revolution, especially with the introduction of AI tools, for example, which are being used by public sector organizations in all kinds of interesting ways. So better using technology may provide opportunities to improve access. Your community seems to have very high level of commitment to Petrolia, just like you expressed earlier. And that is expressed through high levels of volunteerism and community engagement, and opportunities to partner between organizations. We heard about that quite a bit. Okay, and then finally, threats, and then I'll pause for a moment and see if there's anything that comes to mind for you that hasn't been covered here. I know I've mentioned this sort of as an internal pressure, but it really can't be overstated. The rapidly—
Yep. Okay, I'm in now. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, bye.
Hello. The rapidly increasing costs, way above normal inflationary pressures, is making a significant challenge for major capital projects and purchases, especially things like heavy equipment vehicles and so on are in a different price category than they were even a couple of years ago. Labor and staffing impacts, including pending retirements, which will have an impact on service delivery and operations. Again, the increased expectations and the need potentially for additional internal capacity. Lots of uncertainty in local government in Ontario right now, as I know you all know. There's been a few key pieces of legislation that, for everything from local governance arrangement to development charges, the landscape has shifted a bit. And then high levels of need for specific demographic groups, specifically thinking here about youth, mental health, again, something we don't talk about often enough, but there may be parts of the community that need more support than they have in the past. And then we've already mentioned this, but the level of anger and mistrust generally. Okay, so that is a lot of me talking. I'm going to stop talking there. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I guess my question for you is, did that sound like how you see the Petrolia in the world today? Was there anything important missing from that list, or things that you maybe see them a little bit differently than what was expressed here when we worked with the staff team to put this together? So I'll stop there. How did that sit with you? Councillor Welsh.
I saw with opportunities with increased expectations from the public, really good opportunities for public education, that we make it palatable and that we make it easy and comfortable for people to participate in the municipal process. And that will translate into hopefully more people being interested in the municipal process and perhaps sitting in the chairs we're sitting in the next 10 or 15 years.
Okay, great. We will add that to the document.
I think it covered it off quite well. A lot of those challenges that we have. I feel pretty good about what he said. There is a lot of opportunities. There is some challenges to go with those opportunities, and the anger part is like a new reality, and I'm glad that was captured, because between social media and anger and misinformation, it really does create big issues. So
yeah, Yeah, very different environment. Okay, anything else? Okay. All right, well, thank you for those two comments. It sounds like we're mostly on the right track. Some reference to the opportunity for educating the public. We will build that in, and it sounds like we need to emphasize the piece about the changed environment from social media and fake news and misinformation. It is creating a different environment, certainly for public sector organizations and for you as public sector leaders. So we will add that in. Thank you. Okay, so let's move to, so if that kind of captures where we are today and the landscape around you, things that are changing inside your organization and outside, what does that mean in terms of the path forward? So as you know, this strategic plan is future focused, right? 2024 to 2028. So where do we think that we're headed as a community? So each of you very generously made time to connect with me over the last few weeks. And I had a couple of very simple questions for you. As you know, you had interesting and insightful answers for me. And if I heard you, and I guess this would be the question for you, I'll share this and then pause again. Every single one of you mentioned two specific things, and then a bunch of other things too, but there were two ideas that it seemed to me, again, if I heard you, that really rose to the top because they were mentioned so frequently and with a lot of emphasis in our discussion. So the first one in terms of priority was about this community and developing and deepening this sense of community that residents in Petrolia feel. Even when, doing the kind of silly exercise about how do you talk about your community to people from outside of it, the sense of being a small town, close-knit, kind people, connected community, those were ideas that you expressed again today in that exercise. I put in one quote here about we have a distinct who we are and we know what we're all about, but a little bit of worry I heard from a number of you about how do you preserve that kind of tight-knit, close sense of deep connections between residents as you are growing so quickly. One of you talked about how someone who's moving to Petrolia today deserves to have that same sort of feeling of connection to Petrolia as someone who is part of a community, part of a family that's been here for generations. So how do you keep that tight-knit, close community vibe, but also allow it to expand as your community grows? So that was kind of the big idea, number one, that I think that I heard from you as a group. The second thing was about sustainability. And again, kind of a connected idea, acknowledging that the community is growing very quickly and wanting to make sure that physically, like how the community actually grows in terms of connections, in terms of your servicing, the financial planning around growth, what these new neighborhoods look like, what kind of physical amenities are in place. There was a feeling that sustainability needed to be a really important part of how you make decisions about how you grow. It sounds like you're already doing this, but it was something that, again, most of you mentioned in our discussions. So there's a feeling that we have this distinct history in oil, and we need to build a distinct future in terms of environmental sustainability. Second, people come here wanting big city amenities, but also the small town vibe. So again, if I heard you, these were kind of the two top ideas that were expressed, this sort of social sense of connection between people. And then physically, as the community is growing, how do you do so in the most sustainable way? So of course, those were not the only two things you identified. Those seem to me to be the two big ideas, but you also talked about in smaller numbers, the connectivity. I know you're doing a lot of work on this right now, but the connectivity of how people move through the community was something that a few of you mentioned. Economic development, and particularly there seemed to be a shared interest in small businesses and addressing, making sure that there's no downtown vacancy and the downtown is filled with businesses and the community grows as you see new residents coming to town. Arts and culture, huge amount of pride for the existing amenities in a sense that as investments are needed, that's important because they're just such important parts of the identity of Petrolia. Municipal services. You talked again about the kind of capacity of the services you provide, maybe exploring opportunities for sharing services, as I know you already do in a couple of emergency and fire services and so on. Supporting families, some of you talked about particular demographic groups who may require more support, from providing childcare to amenities that people need as they age, and then things that can keep youth engaged and ideally in Petrolia. Green initiatives, 2 of you mentioned electrification specifically, so added that to the list. And then finally, heritage, preserving the downtown, 2 of you mentioned that as well. Okay, and then last thing before I open it up to you and say, did I hear you? Are these the things that matter most to you right now? I asked you how Petrolia would be different in 2028. This is kind of a, how would you know it? What would you know it when you see it sort of question? And the way that you answered that question, first and foremost, was in a social sense, so about people and their lived experiences. You talked about quality of life for everyone in Petrolia. Second, again, more to the built form, as new neighborhoods are being built, they're full of people and families, people feel welcome and so on. Third, that by the end of this term, at the term of the plan, 2028, big projects would be complete, and a lot of the connectivity improvements that you're working on would be in place. People would be benefiting from that. Downtown full, once again. There were a couple of mentions of sort of having a more concrete way of examining big picture how the municipality is doing. So having some key performance indicators so that you can show the connection, this is one of your words, between what you're doing and bigger picture objectives. And then finally, a strong reputation as a municipal leader. Something you already have, but making sure that that stays front and center. Okay, so I'll pause there once again, so we can see each other. So same question. What do you think? Did I hear you? Are those the big ideas that you as a group kind of come together around? Are there things that maybe we talked about and you didn't see on this list, but should have been there in error on my part? What do you think? Any initial reactions?
All right, thank you. I can certainly say that certainly between the discussion between myself and yourself, everything has been nicely captured in your report out. I'm just wondering if we should add something about kind of adaptability, right? We're expecting lots of change, maybe with the provincial government, or you never know how they're going to change things. So maybe we should be looking at how we can be adaptable to these changes that seem to be happening frequently in my short term in municipal leadership.
Okay, great. Anyone else have a thought?
I hate silence, but I think you captured what I see. I think that is a great addition that Chad mentioned, because we are going to be constantly changing. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks with the government. So I guess how we analyze, and we continuously analyze, and that it's all our policies, procedures, and direction are works in progress, that we're going to need to be very adaptable as we go. So I feel pretty comfortable with what you've said.
Great. So just
I think you did a great job of capturing the conversations, and adaptability certainly speaks to where we are right now, and the fact that that is going to be a rolling change as we move forward, not only through this year, but as the upcoming years. But I think it certainly is a great addition to the other conversations outside of our own that is certainly noted. I think it's a solid place to start for sure.
Okay. Well, this is very efficient. Sometimes it's a much longer conversation where I didn't actually hear what you're saying, but if I'm hearing you right now, we've got a really good starting list here of kind of what's going on in the municipality, what's going on beyond the municipality, and then also what does that mean for the 2024 to 2028 period in terms of the things that are most important to you. Okay, so I'm hoping we can kind of switch gears a bit and start to think about kind of the contents of your plan, starting with the vision. But is there anything else before we dive into the strategic planning work that we haven't talked about yet, or we haven't covered, things that are happening out in the world that we need to think about or talk about? If not, okay. All right, so let's dive into the vision. So one of the most important parts of any strategic plan is that there is a very clear articulation of a big picture. Where are we headed? So vision is sometimes described in, like, I find it a little fluffy, to be honest, but like sort of that, if you were looking out into the future and you had this, you know, you had the foresight to be able to see what Petrolia would look like, how would you capture it? Usually these are kind of short, pithy, inspiring statements, and they speak to where the municipality and where the community is going. So I will start by sharing your current vision statement with you. This is the vision from the previous strategic plan, reflecting the work of previous council and administration. Sometimes the vision statement stays the same because it clearly articulates where you're going. Vision usually, doesn't change that much. It's not like Petrolia, where you're headed today compared to 5 years ago. Maybe it's not as radically different, and so this vision is fine. Maybe it doesn't quite fit the reality right now. You'd like something new. So I'll read you the current vision statement kind of painfully slowly so we can think about it. And then my question for you is going to be, should this be the vision statement that you want to just continue? That's the vision for the next plan. Or is there something that you would like to see change? And if so, we can kind of work our way through that. So here is the vision statement from your 2017 to 2022 plan. A great plan, by the way, that articulated a lot of things that got done, which is fabulous. It's not always the case. Okay, so here's the vision statement: to be a leader and a model for all Ontario municipalities through innovation, civility, and inclusivity. It's kind of part number one. To foster growth, to encourage development and diversity. Continue to create an outstanding quality of life for our residents through progressive and sustainable governance. So a lot of similar ideas to what we've been talking about today. I'll leave this up for a second, but my question for you is, does that, oh, sorry. There we go. Does that feel like the vision that this is a new council and a new term, the beginning of a new plan? What do you think? Do you love the vision and we leave it as is? Do you think that we need to develop something new? And if so, what would be different about the new statement compared to what you've had in place? Councillor Walsh, start us off.
I think that it's funny that the vision does quite fit with all of the things that you discussed with all the councillors and staff so far. I think we could probably add that word adaptability that Chad brought in somewhere in there, whether it's that word or something that resembles that word or means the same thing. There's always room for improvement.
Okay, very good. How do others react to the statement? Love it, keep it, or it's like a love it or list it episode, or change it?
I think personally, from what we've heard so far, it still seems fairly accurate.
Okay, so this would be an informal vote for keep it as is. I'm hearing you.
I agree. I like it. I'm just wondering if we should flip, like we should talk about the residents and the town first, and then being a leader in Ontario. Like I know we're as a municipality, we're here for the people. So I'm just wondering if it would make sense to kind of flip the way it's originally laid out.
Okay, so start with the part that is externally facing about residents, but keep the basic ingredients the same. Just change the order.
Yeah, just the thought. Like we put the people first, and
Okay. I know this is a more informal way of discussing probably your normal meetings, but I'm seeing a lot of nods, so that's good.
I would agree with Chad. That is a small thing, but it likely has a huge impact because, ultimately the residents, we want to be leaders and have a model for all Ontario, but first things first is our residents. I think that's a great addition to do that. I agree with Liz's point. I think it does have all the good bones that we need there. just being creative with how it's written, I think can be impacting as well. So.
Anyone have a different view? Okay, so we're moving along very efficiently. So if I'm hearing you, what we will do is we'll take this away, move the externally facing piece of residents to be upfront, lead with the part about the work that you do and why it's important to the community you serve. We'll add in a reference to adaptability, given the pace of change right now that you are and very likely will be responding to. But otherwise, as you said, your worship, it's got good bones, so we'll keep the basic components the same, just massage them a little bit along those lines. Everybody good with that? Okay. All right. This is, as I said, very efficient way of moving through this. Okay. All right, so the second kind of big ingredient in most strategic plans, after identifying that big where we are headed, the aspirational statement that describes the community and where it will be at the end of the plan, then we get into a bit more detail about your priorities, so the things that are most important to you. By the time we get to the end of this document, the end of this process, you can imagine these are sort of the big categories that the strategic plan is organized into. Usually underneath each priority, then we would have a set of actions, kind of specific things that will happen over the term of the plan. And then sometimes a lot more detail about timeline, performance indicators, and so on. We'll get there as we get later on in the process. But it's really important up front to make sure that we have a clear understanding of your priorities as a council, the things that are most important to you when making decisions and most important to the community from 2024 to 28. So again, based on the conversations that we had, I think of this as kind of a first shot in the dark to see if I heard and understand the common ground in terms of what seems to matter most to you. I think that I heard three big priorities. And again, this will feel similar to the summary that I did earlier. So the first one is about Petrolia as a great place to live. And again, we will massage these so that the language is much tighter, but this would be the collection of ideas that you expressed about people feeling very connected to the place where they live, where it is an inclusive community, it's welcoming, it's caring. You had beautiful anecdotes to share with me about what that looks like, from caring for people who are experiencing poverty or homelessness and how that happens in Petrolia. One of you mentioned the Petrolia Senate, like residents gathering on a regular basis to talk about things that matter to them. This like kind of fabulous connectivity that defines what it's like to be in Petrolia. So making sure that that is front and center in all of the decisions that you make, but preserving that connected small town vibe, but also being considerate again of the risk that can come with growth. So making sure it's a place that offers something for every stage in life. I was really happy to hear that youth and like very young youth came up in a few of the conversations. A lot of the contemporary research suggests we should be focusing on building communities for 2-year-olds, for babies, because building communities for them will attract families, and that seems to be a key ingredient, especially right now where there's so much migration happening. So creating this great connected place to live, it sounded like was your number one priority as a group, again, if I heard you. Second, building a sustainable community. Again, we've talked a little bit about this throughout today, but being very thoughtful and responsible. I put those words in sort of carefully because there are words that a number of you used when describing what sustainability meant to you. So as you grow and develop new neighborhoods, that doing so and being very careful about preserving the heritage, being very careful about environmental sustainability, and also thinking physically about what the experience is like, especially the connectivity between neighborhoods and the downtown. A lot of you talked about that, that was kind of the most important thing to you as a group, again, if I heard you. And then the third one is really about, I don't mean government here, it's not a typo, I mean governance. So the way that you as a group and as a municipality work, but with a lot of consideration of how you are connected to the broader community. You talked a lot, and with great pride, by the way, which is great to hear, about the range of organizations, service clubs, and so on who are very active in Petrolia. And so you as a council and as a municipality demonstrating leadership in bringing people together around shared priorities, making great things happen and being a leader in doing so. But as you were doing that, and this kind of connects to Councillor Welsh's first comment today, being able to build an engaged community and maybe a more informed and educated community in doing so, and establishing and maintaining strong partnerships across all of the different sectors, from your private sector, small businesses and so on, nonprofits who are active, and then other public partners. It sounded like that was something that seemed to run through your comments as a theme. So I will pause here again, and I'll leave this up for just a second, but if I heard you, your 3 top priorities are about a great place to live, sort of social dynamics. Second, sustainability in terms of the built form. And the third was more of a how you work inside and beyond as an organization, as a community. And so I guess as a shot in the dark, a starting point, I'm proposing these as the 3 big priorities that we would organize your plan around. And again, this is just a starting point, so I'll stop there. How does that sound to you? Are we on the right track? Are we missing something big? Would you organize it differently? What do you think? And I don't want to sound too wed to this. Like, I know I'm presenting this back to you. If you hate it, it's okay. Say so. We could change it. It's just so we're not starting with a blank page. Councillor Welsh, go ahead.
Again, I think it sounds like we're all on the same page again, and we're all here for the right reasons. And I always look, forward 2 generations and want them to look back and say, holy cow, look at the decisions these guys made 20 years ago, and they really had an impact on the quality of life we have now.
That long-range generational piece is something we should probably think of a way that we build in, including how we measure this. It's an interesting comment. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Hyatt.
Yeah, I guess kind of the only word that kind of scares me in there is the big city amenities. Like I don't know if we want to be in a position where we're saying, we can do everything that maybe London can do. Like, I think that I guess that would be the only word that would kind of, the only phrase that would kind of scare me in terms of what we're saying we want to do long term. Like, there is a limit, obviously, we're going to be able to achieve, and maybe it's not big city amenities, but maybe it's a different word to kind of give the same spirit and the same meaning.
Very good point. Yeah. It does, even now as you're saying this, I'm like, the language feels kind of at odds with the core essence of what you all articulated, even in the first question today about what defines Petrolia. It is not aspiring to be a big city. It's the closeness and fabulous quality of life that comes from a smaller community. Great point. Thank you. Councillor Patel.
And maybe it's as simply as saying, we're growing, and as we grow and develop and welcome new people to the community, we're looking at resources to support that growth in all aspects of resources with all age groups that were previously mentioned. Maybe that is a easier comment than big city resources.
Yeah, that's a much better way of expressing it. Thank you. Sorry for the clicking noises. I'm just taking notes. Okay, any other reactions? Okay, well, those are great comments. I will take these away, and you'll see what you have said here reflected in the next iteration that you see. But it sounds like we are getting close, and that organizing the plan around 3 big priorities. It sounds like, sort of with some massaging of language, that those are the 3 general right categories of things, from the connectedness and social dynamics of the community, sustainability in terms of your built form, and then governance, the way that you work together and build partnerships with those involved in leading Petrolia. Great. Sorry, my 2-year-old just got home from dance lessons, and she is You probably hear her. She probably would like to show me what she learned at dance tonight. So, all right. Okay, so we are moving. I'm sure you won't be sad about a little bit more time between this and your council meeting, but I just want to walk through what you can expect over the next few months. And again, this is my job is to support you and by extension your staff team, but in getting from today's initial discussion to a finished strategic plan that you all, I hope, unanimously approve, but also feel really proud of, and that it reflects, you know, the common ground in terms of where you'd like to see a municipality go. So in the conversations with each of you, as you know, I asked you a little bit about the process, you know, what you'd like to see, what a successful process would look like from your perspective, and also who needs to be engaged in building this strategic plan. You had some really helpful advice for me. One was about making sure that we go to where people are. We are in the summer months where there are already a lot of kind of natural opportunities where people are gathered. And so, you know, instead of asking everyone to come and do a survey or come to an event, having a combination of things where, you know, if there's an existing gathering of people, we're taking advantage of that. And then you also identified a number of specific existing networks, groups of people who we should make sure that we invite in to have their say, specifically service organizations. Almost all of you mentioned. And then you had a few kind of more specific ideas, including the youth member of the advisory council, advocacy groups. There's obviously a group mobilized around childcare and a few other issues. So making sure that they know this process is happening and that we'd like to hear from them. And then as with everything, engagement, for it to be successful, it has to be fun. So being kind of light about it is also going to be important, I think, including getting people's attention during the summer. So here's the proposed approach is that we establish a core set of questions. And I'm kind of jumping around here, but think of this like spokes on a wheel. So multiple different opportunities for people to basically tell us the same kinds of things. So there's kind of no wrong way of participating, but at the heart, we're asking people a core set of questions about their experiences in Petrolia, oriented around the priority areas that you identified today. So the three that I started with and we tweaked a little bit, we would go out to people and ask them about their own experiences with those things. And I think in my experience, this has been helpful, especially in kind of the more detailed parts of the plan. When we ask people about, you know, being a connected community, for example, they will have lots of experiential things to say about where that's going well and where it's not. And that will be useful data and a useful input for us as we build the more specific parts of the plan. So the idea here is we would have, again, establish that set of questions and then have a couple of different ways that we invite people in to share their input. I'm proposing that we do, one of the options is an asynchronous, sorry, I'm using more technical words than I should, that we have a video booth that people can participate in anytime. I'd like to use something called, it's called video chat, and it feels like doing a FaceTime on your phone where you get asked a set of questions and you can respond. It turns those questions into video, into text, and into audio. Sorry, people have the opportunity to participate in those ways, and then we can take their input and you know, compile it the same way that we would with a normal survey. And we use the opportunity of these big events to have sort of pop-up presence, inviting people to participate. And there they could share their input orally, or they could share it in writing, and then taking advantage of your network. So there will also be a sort of basic survey option, and where you are out and about in the community, maybe you're meeting with, you know, someone who's moving into the community, or a small business owner or otherwise, just informally letting them know that, you know, the municipality is engaging in a strategic plan and we'd like to hear from them. You have huge network and reach in the community. So if you are willing over the next couple of months to help us get the word out, that would be great. And then in a few places where you identified specific people like the youth, we were talking in one of the meetings about going into a high school class and asking a youth member to lead that discussion, to seek their feedback. So this is a long way of saying the idea here is a whole combination of things, all driving people to a core set of questions about their experience in Petrolia, organized around those three priorities today. And that we would do this from July to the beginning part of August. So have about a 6 or 7 week period. And I'll jump to kind of how this all fits together. And then I'll go back to the question of how does that sound to you? And does that fit what you're looking for? So July and August, we will focus on hearing from residents. We will engage a number of things to ask people about their experiences around those priorities. We'll pull that together towards the end of August. During the same time, I will be working with your senior administration to do the massaging of the language that we talked about today, and also taking stock of some of the big priorities and projects that are going on, so we start to flesh out the details of the strategic plan. And then we will look towards the fall for coming back together as a group and having a second conversation where, instead of just kind of presenting big picture stuff like today, you will see a lot of the ingredients of a strategic plan to respond to. And again, the questions that I'll have for you will be similar today about, what's missing? How does this sound to you? Does it feel like we've got the right projects in the right place? Are there things that need to happen during this term that are not reflected here? And from there, I'm sure there will be editing and so on that comes out of that conversation. And then we'll move towards finalizing the document and having an approved plan by the fall. So that is sort of the game plan of what is ahead. Stop sharing here. How does that sound to you? Is there anything that's important to you that's not reflected here?
I think as far as community engagement goes, we have some pretty good resources right within our own committees of council that citizens that have already come forward, wanting to be involved. I think we should include some of those people, or maybe all of those people, in that community engagement part.
Okay. So people have already stepped up and said they want to participate. This is a good chance to directly invite them and say, hey, we need to hear from you. We're working on this important process, and we'd love to hear what you think. Great.
I think it was a good point to keep it fun, make it interactive with people. I think those are good things. I think we do have a lot of events and social things that, if you were, you came to it, it's not oh, you got to fill this out, make it a little more fun. I think that's a great point. I think everything was laid out very well. I like the timeline. I think it's good. Summer is a chance to definitely get out and see people. So one area that maybe I just throw out there for engagement too, I really find that some of the seniors in our community really they know our past, and they can identify with what we're doing. So if there's a way to do something with some of our homes that we have, I think they would want to be a part of that as well. So if there's something that we can do there and engage our seniors, I think that would be a big benefit as well.
Okay, great. Councillor Welsh, Patel.
Hi, I was just thinking, and I might be backing us up a few slides there, but a lot of the people that I've talked to and that I encounter on the regular basis, when Joel got talking about seniors, it popped back into my head. I've noticed that because we have a lot of young families moving here for perhaps jobs in the valley or the healthcare or whatever, that sometimes, quite often, I think is what I'm seeing, is that some of the parents of those families, like the grandparents, are following those people to the community because we do have we have a lot of those amenities in place. So I think we have kind of an interesting dynamic happening there as well. And to make sure that we engage all of the new people as best we can.
I think Councillor Patel, did you have your hand up as well?
I did. Thank you. I think that we have such a phenomenal opportunity this summer in the coordinating dates to be able to do some marketing. We have a great marketing director. I'm sure Larissa's already have the wheels turning as how we can have maybe a pop-up opportunity at some of these events or a drop box, multi ways for people to either fill out on a sheet of paper or online, or as you said, I think that it's just a matter of launching the idea and coming up with how we can support some of these events and let the community know we're there and have a, an opportunity for them to fill it out in person or, any other ideas to align with the great lineup of activities we have set out for the summer.
Sort of last call for anybody else have any other questions for Kate? Kate, did you have anything further? I want to thank you on behalf of council for doing this. You made the conversations fun when we talked to you, and you definitely captured what we were saying. So I appreciate that. I look forward to the end result, and I look forward to the process that we're going to go through to get to the end result. So on behalf of council, I just want to thank you very much for your presentation today, and I'll give it to you for the final words if you have anything you want to say.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much, your worship and members of council. And you also have made this fun. I am very, to my husband, sort of an aside, but I came back from each discussion being like, we need to get to Petrolia more this summer. Like, oh my goodness, there's a lot happening here. And so, yeah, your enthusiasm for the community is infectious. And I'm really looking forward to our next steps. We will be in touch with a lot more detail on, we had a general discussion today, but as we put these things into action and have specific opportunities for people to participate, you will hear lots more over the summer about what that looks like. But today was really just about getting direction from you on how this process shapes up, and you've given that very nicely. So thank you very much. I enjoyed today, and we will be in touch, and I look forward to supporting you through the next stage of this.
Okay, thank you. I guess we don't have anything else on our agenda. The last thing would be adjournment. I have a Councillor Clark, and okay, nobody wants to second it. Okay, Councillor Patel. And again, thank you for coming. Thank you for there's community members that are on watching. It's nice to see that there's people that are interested in it. So all in favor of adjournment? And we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will be back at 7 o'clock.